mentioned, Steve, what role does ownership play in this process from this point forward?
Well, he owns the team. You know, he's a Steve's a great listener, as we can all attest to, and he never makes any demands, but he listens. He has really good advice in most instances, and he loves personnel. He loves the game. He's fascinated by how we are able to build the team. So he has a genuine interest, which is really fun for all of us to kind of discuss different things with him. And he's become a good sounding board for me personally, and I think for these other guys too, to bounce ideas off of.
Has research changed at all on players who've suffered concussions with the league emphasis on safety? Do you do any more research medically on players that have had concussion history?
Well, I have noticed this year, and this is a credit to Eric and Joe, that in the summaries of our reports that are being read by players, they talk about the number of concussions they've had in college. So that information is out there for us. What we do, and most teams do, is once we get guys here, we'll get a baseline test did with those players, so that if a concussion occurs, then we have something that we can refer back to. But it is something now that throughout the league and in all professional sports and on the collegiate level, that everybody's spending more time looking at it.
Ozzie, in terms of your restricted free agents, has there been any talk about possibly try to work out extensions with any of those guys like Ladarius Webb or Kerry Williams?
We are involved in negotiations with both. And what the status is, I don't know. I haven't seen Pat today. I only saw him once. But our restricted guys are guys that we would like to extend to longer-term deals.
Ozzie, are you at all concerned about the possibility of Ray Rice not being around in the offseason, perhaps even the start of training camp?
Well, that's something that John, Steve, Dick, and I, Eric, Pat, we talk about when we put the tag on it. What are the consequences and what are the unknown consequences, that could happen. And, and up until a guy actually signs his franchise tender, he's not under contract, and, we are not allowed to even ask him to come to our mandatory minicamp. We understand those things. We lived them through Suggs, through Chris, through Wally Williams, even, back seemed like decades ago. I guess it was a decade ago or so. So we've experienced that before, and we'll be prepared. And I think Steve made a great statement that I read. Whenever Ray shows up, he'll be ready to play. It's no doubt in our mind. And with Coach Harbaugh want 100% participation in every offseason program, in every OTA, in every minicamp. Yes, he would, but he also knows that's unrealistic also. I didn't say that wrong.
Ozzie talked about, having that range of being able to move up 10 picks or back 10 picks, but can you kind of talk about the process when there's a player that you like that fall? I know Michael Orr comes to mind, about exactly how that unfolds with you guys actually making the calls of being able to move up to a certain spot to get a guy, and how something like that actually unfolds and make that happen.
Well, it's really who the player is and who are the other players around him. You'll never see us trade up to get a player unless we think clearly he's by far the best player that's still there. I mean, if it's close and there are other players there, then we'll stay and pick. And we weigh the pick, we weigh the players. We know before we're on the clock, we know the range of players we're going to get. We can narrow it down. If you're 7 picks away, we can look and see the 6 players that we can get. You have a sense for that, and as a guy gets picked, we cross them off. Where we would consider trading up, we traded up last year to take Ja Reed, for instance, in the 3rd round. One of the reasons we did that is we looked at the offensive line board, and it was barren. And we basically said this is the last guy left that we really covet on the offensive line. All these guys got picked. It made it easy for us to make that decision. There were no other players at that position or even any other players that we really thought were 3rd-round type value when we were picking. So that's when you start to get the itch, which is what I call it. you make some phone calls possibly, you talk to some teams, you have relationships with other teams that you've traded with in the past. It's easy to start a dialogue when you've made a trade with another team that you've dealt with. And then oftentimes teams will call you too, looking to move back. And so Pat Moriarty does an unbelievable job of keeping track of all the information, all the phone calls, and we have all that right in front of us, and you basically weigh the offers, you consider the value of the player, who the player is, and if you feel strongly enough about the player and you think it's a deal that you can live with, you'll consider going up to get him. It happens quickly. Sometimes we'll be on the clock with one team, and another team may call with a better deal. So it happens. You're never prepared for it 100%. But the big thing really is who's the player that you're going up to get, and is he valuable enough for you to do that? Because a lot of times, as you know, we covered picks. There's nobody that covers picks more than the Baltimore Ravens. And so the notion of giving up a pick is pretty distasteful for us unless the player is pretty darn good.
You've dealt with 3 coaches in your tenure as general manager: Ted Marchibroda, Brian Billick, and John. Could you talk about each one a little bit and just how John differs from them in their involvement in the draft?
Well, first of all, the first 2 had backgrounds on offense, Ted and Brian. So John is different from that point. Ted was highly engaged in the draft. I came out of Cleveland with Belichick, and it was all about height, weight, and speed. And then Ted talked to me about passion. A guy having a passion to play the game sometimes could be more important than what a guy's speed was and what his weight was and what his height was. So that was good. Brian, got to the point where he really trusted us. He trusted the process. And, we would bring him in when needed. And he enjoyed the aspect of personnel. John comes in with a different perspective in that John's been a defensive coach and a special teams coach. And so to have someone with the expertise like that in the room, how he wants to build his team from that standpoint. And then also now as he's gravitated, John enjoys personnel. I mean, when he leaves here, he'll be grinding on players. And every player on our board from a certain grade up to the highest play, he will look at every one of them and will have an opinion on them. So that's good to have when your head coach is vested like that in the process.
It wasn't your fault last year, but what happened with the Bears, the whole mishap? Is there any safeguards that can be done on your part or the league's part to make sure that doesn't repeat itself again? Is that the way it remains?
Well, I mean, the league's point of view is, and in everything we do, we draw a bright line. And the bright line is there has to be communications by both clubs with someone from the league office, either Joel Bussard or Ken Fiore. End of the story.
On safety, how much is that position of interest for you guys, just with Zibby and Haruki leaving, and you got Sean constantly here, and also just Mark Barron and also Harrison Smith just talks about.
Well, I think safety is like a lot of positions. We feel like we could use some depth, at that position. I think this is a depth draft for the Ravens, and we could use at virtually every position. As far as those particular players, I think Mark Barron is a great player. We've had a chance to see him again because he's an Alabama player. We've seen him a lot, on TV, live games. Just a great player. Harrison Smith's an interesting guy too. He's a big, rangy safety who runs pretty well. He's got good ball skills, very smart. I think he's a two-time captain at Notre Dame, which tells you about his personality, intangibles, and leadership. Both guys are very good players. Both guys figure to come off the board. Barron will probably be, picked first. I think Harrison Smith will probably come off sometime, between the end of the first round and probably, midway through the, end of the second round.
John, can you address the transition under the new CBA as far as limited OTAs, padded practices, how you and your staff have had to adjust to that?
Yeah, and you're right, it's all new. So we're kind of figuring out the rule. We're still waiting for some rulings from the league right now in terms of what we can do with them when they come back on the first day, and we pretty much have the outline all set up. We understand what we're going to be able to do for the most part, but there's some questions as far as where you can meet with them and whether they can be standing or where they have to be sitting. I think the players are in the process of really organizing what they want from their agreement. See, the agreement's in place, it's written, the lawyers have written it. And now you got to kind of iron out some wrinkles. What does this really mean? And there are some issues there that kind of are head scratchers. I think that the players are scratching their head about, and they'll talk to their union leadership. Dominique now is a big part of that, and I'm sure they'll iron out some wrinkles. But hey, whatever it says right now, that's what we're doing, and we're not interested in bumping up against any rules.
John, last year Paul Kruger had a pretty good season in situational type of play. Is he ready to take the next step now as far as just being more playing time?
Ted, I think he really is. We talked about having a chance to go back and watch every one of his reps. He's going to have to compete like everybody else, and someone may get drafted that he's going to have to do battle against. Albert McClellan will be in the mix, and others potentially, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't rise to the occasion and have a heck of a year.
John, you talked a little bit last week, I guess, when you were asked about John Reed. You guys can chime in a little bit as well, but right now he's kind of the guy at left guard. Has he played on the left side at all outside of practice for you guys last week? Did he do any of that in college? And if not, or if so, what is his transition like?
Well, he played on the left side. Obviously, in practice, he played left guard a lot, and we saw him there. But he played on the left side when he was extended tackle at times coming in the game. So we've seen a little bit of that. His issue is not going to be left side, right side. I don't even think it's going to be his height. Some people are concerned about his height at guard because he's a very good bender. He could play either position. I think there's reason. I've heard it said that he might be a little bit better at tackle than guard, and you can make that case. It's possible, but if he's one of our top 5 linemen, he's going to be out there, and really, he's aggressive. He's long. He's really a mean, nasty guy. He's a very good athlete. He's really good on the zone schemes that we run. If he's our left guard, if he earns that job, we're going to be happy to have him in there, and we'll be a pretty formidable left side. The field might tilt a little bit with those 2 guys over there, so that's a good thing.
Not an undoable adjustment for him to go become a left guard.
Not at all. Not at all. He did it last year, and he looked good doing it. It's not like he can't get his pads under people. He can do it. He's capable of doing that.
John, are you anxious to see a guy like him, even Tandon Doss, just what they can do when they actually have a normal off-season?
Oh, that's a great point. We just talked to Tandon Doss yesterday. I'm glad you brought his name up. He's working hard in Indianapolis. He can't wait to get back. And we haven't had an off-season with our second-year guys ever. Guys like David Reed, haven't seen an off-season at all. So just a chance. Terrence Cody's in here every day. If you've seen him around here, looks tremendous. You can't wait to get your players back, especially those young guys who haven't had a chance to be around in the off-season yet. Hopefully we'll see some huge improvement from some of those guys.
Once the draft is over, what do you do specifically to contact these undrafted players and try to get them to come here as opposed to going to another team?
Well, this year is going to be more like we've been accustomed to in the past. Last year was a different scenario for us and difficult. We do a great job. Joe Douglas and Mark Azevedo and Ian Cunningham, those guys do a great job of kind of organizing our recruiting efforts, and that's begun. We've sent out letters to these guys, some different things in the mail. They'll get some other communications from our coaches. We talk to these guys at night, basically to tell them that they're in our plans. We're excited about them. And then once the draft ends, we've got lists, prioritized lists based on who's available still. Don't want to give up all of our secrets, but we basically have certain guys who are in charge of certain positions and in different ways that we go about it. And we really hit the phones, and certain guys are really, really good recruiters for us. And when we have to bring in the big guns, we bring in Ozzie and Steve, if we can get Ozzie off the treadmill. And they'll close it out for us, and it's a pretty frenetic pace. Guys, hitting the phones, and we do the best we can.
Eric, how many names do we have on the board when you guys go to the draft?
We'll have about 150 names of guys that we think are draftable. In reality, most of our picks, in a good year, most of our draft picks will come from our top 100. That doesn't always happen. Some years we have to go outside of the lines. Been a couple of years where we've had to actually pull a few players up from outside our 150, but that hasn't happened very often.
Ozzie, with where you guys are in the salary cap situation, Is there a real sense of urgency to perhaps reach long-term deals and kind of hammer out a couple of these, and you feel like you're close on any of the long-term guys?
Which guys are you talking about?
Joe, Ray Rice, and the two cornerbacks, the restricted guys.
Well, we have ongoing talks with all four, and just as I stated earlier, we have ways. If there's a good player, whether we get a deal done with Joe or Ladarius or with Ray, we have ways to being able to get that player. So the reason why we want to get the long-term deals done with those players because we like them, and we want them to be in Baltimore for a long time because they have been very helpful for us to get us to this point, and they're going to be helpful for us to take the next step.
John, you talked about wanting to get better with the offensive line. I don't know if things change with the new CBA. Is there a next phase after the initial phase of free agency where guys then become available? Is it a June 1 thing? Is it after a draft? There might be more players available.
Well, that's probably a better question for Ozzie.
I think the next phase will be after the draft. Once teams draft some players, get a chance to have them in their rookie mini camps, then I think there'll be some more guys that'll be put on the waiver wire. And then in training camp, once you get in the training camp and you find out that some of your players have improved over the off-season program, therefore some veterans could be put out on the street. It's how we was able to get Garrard and people like that last year. So there's still 2 more waves after the draft and at the 53 cut.
There's no longer that June 1 benefit that we used to do.
Oh, it's still there, but you can use the June 1 benefit in March and April now. Yeah, there's a new change to the CBA.